Welcome to The Incredible Messenger, a blend of real-world stories, expert insights, and proven strategies that keep our families, communities, and cities safe and healthy. Moving beyond rhetoric and politics to practical solutions and community safety, here's your host, Jonathan McMillan.
What's up, everybody? It's your man, Jonathan McMillan, back for another episode of the Credible Messenger podcast. And this is the first for the show. I have a returning guest. I love the conversation that we had the first time that he was on, as I knew I would. And I have invited him back because we just didn't get an opportunity to really dig deep into the totality of the work that he does and the type of work he does. And as I've said on the show many times, the show really is supposed to be, is intended to be a place where people who are involved in the work of gun violence prevention, youth violence prevention, suicide prevention can hear from their counterparts and build a community of what I would say is colleagues, so that we can learn from one another, we can support one another, we can maybe sometimes commiserate with one another, as me and Preston were doing right before I hit record here. With no further delay, let me reintroduce you all to Preston Adams. Preston, good morning.
Good morning. Such a privilege to be with you again. I want to echo real quick. Yeah, I enjoyed our conversation so much. And I think we went on for an hour and a half, and you feel like we could have been here for 8 hours and still not hit everything. So I'm filled with gratitude to have a second go and share some more stuff. And I really enjoyed last time.
I appreciate that, man. We were a bit all over the place, right? Because that oftentimes all over the place is what the work looks like, right? Where I want to go today is talk about a couple of things. One, in the type of work that you do, working with young people who are at a higher risk of being involved or impacted by violence, right? Dig into what a day in the life looks like. Understanding, again, that a day in the work looks very different from one day to the next, right? Because we're dealing with individuals who have individual needs, unique personalities, right? This is not a cookie cutter assembly line type of work. But I do want to get into what does that look like for somebody, in terms of if someone is listening to this podcast that says, hey, I want to be a youth outreach worker, or I want to do youth violence intervention. What is that work? So I want to get there for that listener. And then also on the other side of things, because you're not only doing the work, but you're also building the work as far as a founder and a director of a youth serving organization. So I also want to get to a point where a person who's thinking, hey, I want to start my own organization, what does that look like? What is the business of that? Because I suspect that the actual business, the running of the business, is a bit different than what most people anticipate it to be. Is that good with you?
Love it. I think it's a perfect
All
way
right.
for us to have this show. Yep.
All right. We'll start with the first, a day in the life of doing the work. So it's probably 6 o'clock in the morning. You're waking up. Go.
Yeah, let's even start at 8 or 9 o'clock at night on the previous night, where I'm checking in with young people to be like, yo, are we still good for the morning? We still good for tomorrow? Yeah. Then when I wake up at 6 or 7, a lot of our young people are on Facebook Messenger. So then it's hitting Facebook Messenger. Hey, we still good? I'm going to pull up. And the young people that we have the privilege of working with, and we talked about this a little bit last time, but they're always in survival mode. So they move fast, they move quick, they move minute to minute, hour to hour. It's not even looking past a week, a month. I say that because we consistently, if we're going to get to young people, we have to constantly be communicating. My morning is sending out texts, reminders. My morning is also, to be really honest, my mornings are trauma responses from did something happen the night before. Usually I screen my calls in the evening and late at night. but there have been numerous times where I'm waking up at 5 or 6 and I got flooded of missed calls and texts because somebody was shot or somebody was killed. And so there's also that trauma response, even me like scouring the news to be like, what happened the night before? And so anyway, so morning comes, I'm doing my check-ins with the young people that I'm trying to see that day. And it depends on the season. Let's just choose a season. Let's say it's spring. And I'm working and we work with young people from anywhere from 11 to 25. So we have young people that are in schools, we have young people in the community, young people at facilities. So I might be pulling up to a school to see a young person, checking in with staff members at the school. How is this young person doing? I might be pulling them out of class. It might be sitting in with them in class, really trying to check in and meet young people physically, figuratively where they're at. So it might be in school. We don't have a central office space because the thing about our organization, some organizations do incredible work in one community. So they might be like, we're only in the far Northeast, or we're on the East Side, or we're in Southwest. We work with young people all throughout the Denver metro. So the other thing is it's a lot of me mobbing around the city in different neighborhoods. And that's been a huge privilege and blessing to like really get to know the city and cities of Denver in a really intimate way that very few folks get to. So I'm hopping from young person to young person. Once again, I'm making those phone calls to make sure we're good. But then as part of the work, we get ghosted. We call it getting ghosted, where I'm texting and maybe 2 hours before they're like, yeah, we're good. And then I pull up at school or the house and nobody's there. And so I think the real thing that folks don't understand is there are some organizations where they ask young people and families to come to them, to come to their office, which that's fine for the way in which they want to do the work. That's just not how I do it. And so there's a lot of, just transparently and logistically, there's a ton of driving for me and the work I do. There's also a lot of you get ghosted. And I think early on, it's really easy to, one, get discouraged, two, get really frustrated at young people, and you put it on them, and that's not seeing through a trauma informed lens. And then and especially if that happens over and over. And it's also just a testament of this work takes so much time to build relationships with young people because of the young people we serve. But on a good day, I gave myself probably like 8, 9 years ago, I came with my cap of young people I could see in a day. And it was my emotional capacity because when I'm with young people, I try to be as holistically present as possible. I really do. And I never tried to see more than 5 young people in a day. That was just my emotional capacity. And the other thing for me was like, when I'm going to see a young person, I'm not just seeing them real quick, check in 15, 20 minutes. Like I'm spending time with them and I need to meet them where they're at. So I might meet with a young person and they're going through it. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be like, yo, hey, time, we got to speed this up. I got another client to meet. So I want to be present with them and meet them where they're at in that emotional space. So it's also a lot of scheduling. It takes a certain type of individual that can juggle schedules. It's also reaching out to family members to try and get in touch with young people. The other thing too is I like to take young people outside their community, take them away from their home in safe spaces. So that's the other thing is there's a level of naivete. And if you aren't trained and understanding of gang lines and gang involvement, you can, in a really not trying to harm anybody type of way, but you can really put yourself and your young person in harm too. Like I remember one time there's a restaurant on the north side, Chubby's. And if you're from Denver, Chubby's on the
Mm-hmm.
north side. And I had a young person who is a north sider, and there are two hoods in the north side that beef hard. And Chubby's is like that local spot where you can run into everybody. And I
Mm-hmm.
grabbed him from the west side and he was like, I want to hit Chubby's. And I was like, yo, you sure we're good? And he's like, oh, we're good. The moment we walk in, Jonathan, dude's eyeing us. And I was like, we should not be here right now. And I'm looking at my guy and looking at here, and I'm doing one of these, and in your head, it's just this moment of running through all the scenarios. Luckily, nothing happened. And then later, I was like, "You knew him, huh?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he was strapped, and we're lucky nothing went down. So it's stuff like that where you learn how to keep yourself safe, how to keep others safe. I remember another time when there's been a couple times where I either pulled up right before a drive-by or right after. I remember really vividly where there was a drive-by and it was intended for one of my guys, and actually my wife and I had just left his house and they had shot up the house next door because they had the wrong house. And then there was another time where there was a drive-by and I pulled up later. It's the reality of the work, and it's not to scare folks. It's just to like really paint perspective of the young people we work with. And so I think all of that too, it's just the reality of, once again, the survival mode and the trauma that our young people are constantly in. It might be even pulling up to a hospital after a young person has been hit in a shooting, or I've been to too many funerals than I can count. And then you have celebrations where you set goals with young people, and like the most recent is, "Hey, I really want to take you to a nice restaurant. Let's make a goal. What do you want the goal to be?" And the young man's, "I want to get off probation." You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And then you complete probation, and or it's going to Rockies games or Nuggets games. Or a day in the life is really varied. There is a lot of scheduling. It's a lot of communication with different folks. It's showing up in court. I've had 2 sentencing hearings in the last 2 weeks for young people that have been on pretrial. So it's advocating in court. It's going to staffings with professionals, probation officers, pretrial caseworkers, parole officers. If I'm going to meet a young person in school, it's meeting once again with teachers, advocating in IEP meetings. It's just highly varied, man.
So let's stay there, and then I actually want to go
Yep.
back to a couple other things that you talked about. It's a huge part of this work is being collaborative with the other professionals in a young person's life, and being able to advocate appropriately for them for the work. Well, it's advocating for them is one piece of it, but then it's also advocating for the work that you're doing, because when you have a young person, let's say that he or she is system involved, and so they have a probation officer or a diversion officer or a case manager from human services, and there may be a social worker from the school involved in this young person's life. All of these people have their credentials, right? And their training to interact with this young person from a very, typically is from a very academic slash clinical perspective, which I don't think is wrong,
Mm-mm.
right? Like the science
Mhm.
is the science
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
human behavior sociology. However, I am an advocate of and, right? The word and is the clinical and academic piece components exist for a reason, and they can be very useful if they're applied in a practical, authentic way that reflects that young person's life. All that to say, when you're doing this work, you're interacting with these professionals, right? Other professionals. I want to emphasize that you're interacting with other professionals who may not understand, value what you're doing, and when you're advocating for your young person, it may be perceived as you're naive because you don't have the
Mm.
same type of training that they have, or
Mm.
you don't know what you're talking about. So my question is this: how do you effectively advocate for the young people who you're working
Mm.
with and the work that you do in those settings?
Man, that is an incredible question. Thank you for that. It was a learning journey, honestly. I had to learn it. I'm not a clinician by trade, and so many professionals in the work, whether if they are system professionals or outside providers, they're LCSWs, LPCs, they
The
Cats,
alphabet people.
lax, all of it, right? And they're
Hmm.
incredible. There are incredible folks and incredible professionals. And I think it is intimidating. So I remember,
It can be.
yeah, I remember vividly when I was first doing work with young people, a part of DYS. At the time, it was DYC. So we're talking 12, 13, 14, 15 years ago. And sitting in staffings where we would have, at specifically at Lookout, we would have BHS, who was the therapist at the facility. We would have usually a facility staff. We would have the client manager, which is also known as the parole officer for the youth. We would have the family. We would have the youth. We would have education. We'd have all these professionals there. And I just remember not knowing like how to speak in that moment, how to advocate, what to say. And also like when I get in those spaces, sometimes I get bogged down by the language and the environment. And there's this just weird like posturing and you're like, what is going on? And so it took me a while and I had to be mentored by other folks of like, how do I advocate well? And I think the question is really how do you advocate? And I just want to give context of it was hard at first and it took me a while to learn. And I think what I learned was really I was privileged and I continue to be privileged with the relationship I have with young people is so deep and intimate that very few people in the world will ever get that. And the things that they are sharing with me are so honest and real. And how do I not exploit their story? How do I keep a level of confidentiality and yet empower and elevate their voice in a way that makes sense for both sides? That was really what I was
Hmm.
trying to do is like a young person would say, yo, listen, like, I don't want to gangbang. I really don't. But one, you don't understand, if I'm at a facility or the community I live in, I don't really have a choice, right? And me carrying a gun is the safest thing I can do in the moment, right? How am I supposed to advocate for a young person, right? And so then it's like, how do I speak to professionals in a way that I can't break confidentiality, or do I need to break confidentiality? So it really becomes this code switching type thing. And like I said, our young people, they're giving me their most intimate details. And I really had to learn a lot of the language that professionals are using. I had to do my own training and understanding around social emotional skills, regulation, coping skills, trauma informed training, motivational interviewing, even therapeutic modality. I really had to do my own deep dive, even though I never got an LPC or an LCSW. I had to do my own learning. And then I
Hmm.
listened to other professionals I really respected that were clinical, that were service providers, and I listened to how they spoke, how they advocated, and how they elevated the voice of the young person. And also, really clearly, they helped train the young person to advocate for themselves in those spaces too. And so I had to learn to speak the language and to really code switch. How can I
Hmm.
take what this young person is saying and put it in a language where professionals are going to understand it? I'll give a real clear example. Recently, I got a young person who really struggles with substance misuse. He's overdosed and survived about 4 times, and he's 16. Fentanyl is his substance of choice. And he has, they've tried nearly everything. He's been in intensive inpatient, he's been in detention facilities, he's been in treatment facilities, he's done intensive outpatient, he's done substance misuse, he's done everything, right? And from my perspective, the trauma this young person has experienced that he has not worked through continues to trigger him to want to use substances.
Right.
So we had this staffing the other day and it kept going round and round of he's sitting in detention and they're like, what are we gonna do? Can we get him back with his CBT substance use therapist? It's intensive, it's multiple times a week, all these things. And from what he was telling me, he was like, Preston, it's not working for me. So then it's my job to say, once again, that's the most important voice here. We keep, as professionals, projecting what we think he needs when he's saying, yo, it ain't working. So I chimed in the conversation. And once again, I'm trying to, how do I not belittle or say what you all are doing is wrong? And I'm just saying, hey, from what I've heard from this young person, He says it's not working, and I think we really need to take that. And I said, I think the modality we haven't tried therapeutically is a really trauma-focused modality, right? So EMDR
Mm-hmm.
or neurofeedback, because this young person has so much trauma. And the first time I met him, he said, my substance misuse started after these deaths occurred, and then it became a chemical dependency. He needs healing in and through his trauma. And then we can work through the cognitive and the coping skills and the CBT work. And they were like, you know what? That is an incredible idea. But I say that because 10 years ago, I didn't have that language.
So everything you said matches my experience to the letter. The one piece I'm actually a bit surprised that you didn't start with, and this is not a critique, it's just I anticipated that you were going to start with this, is because this is how you operate in building relationships with those professionals, right? Everything that you said, I have experienced of having to the language. You know what? Matter of fact, this is a bit even ironic as you were beginning to articulate your last answer. You said a couple of acronyms, DHS and DYC and D. And that's the language of the professionals, right? They love their acronyms. They love their acronyms. And it's almost gang talk, right? It's code speak, right? They'll be in a room and they'll be talking about the CBT and the MDW and the just all. And if you are not in that world, if you haven't traveled that journey that they have traveled to get to that room, it's a very uncomfortable
Mm,
place, because you do not want to, at least in my experience, you don't want to
mm,
delegitimize
mm,
yourself
mhm,
by saying,
mhm,
what does that mean?
mhm,
When you, but you have to
yeah,
do it. And I have found, at least again in my experience, that when you show up humble and willing to ask the question,
mhm,
and respectfully, it's not just calling them out. Man, y'all need to stop
mhm,
talking with us, all these abbreviations and
mhm,
stuff that is, excuse me, I'm not familiar with what that term is.
mhm,
When you put yourself out there like that, oftentimes, I won't say every time, but oftentimes people in the room will recognize that, oh, my
mhm,
bad. I was making assumptions that everybody knew what we were talking about. And that may actually be the impetus of a relationship being built, because they say, oh, you're brave enough to ask questions when you don't know what you don't
mhm,
know. And maybe even give them permission to ask questions about things that you know that they don't know. Because you, again, recognize humility as being something that it doesn't discount who you are and what you bring in, the value that you bring to a situation. It's just recognizing that you have more to learn,
mhm,
right? That to me is humility. And you showing that humility and being able to say, hey, I don't know what this is. Can you help
mhm,
me? Can you explain this to me? Often gives them opportunity to tap into your expertise and humble themselves a bit and ask questions about how do they operate with the same goal in mind,
mhm.
where the objective is to help that young person who you're both assigned to, for whatever reason.
No, two thoughts. You're 100% right. I want to add, I didn't start with it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the best way to say it is I want to center our young people and their families and communities and everything. And then I, because of the young people we are privileged to work with, many are system involved. So then we have to collaborate and work alongside systems and professionals. It's the centering of the young people where it starts. Then it has to be collaboration. It has to be. Because one, I mean, for so many reasons, but one is like, Preston can't do everything. Our young people need so many things. And because of systemic barriers and just the realities of the lives that they have lived, their parents, grandparents, generations have lived, like they have a lot of needs, right? They have a lot of assets and they have a lot of needs. And Preston can't be the provider for everything. It takes a collaborative effort to be alongside, remove barriers, to provide access, and to see our young people thrive and be fully liberated. And I have learned some of my best relationships are system professionals, where it's like you recognize real and that there are, I don't know if we should talked about this last time, but we are alongside systems that are broken. And there are incredible folks within those systems that are trying to move those systems to be better, right? And so it's collaborating with them to see the best outcome for our young people. So, yes, it takes collaboration and it takes relationship and it takes humility to say, I can't do it all. And that's the other thing, too, is recognizing when I'm in staffings and sometimes it's like, Preston, can you do it all? And it's no, I can't. Like this young person needs a therapist and they might need another transition worker, or they might need whatever. And then who does Preston know that Preston can tap on to say, hey, I got this young person. They need this. Can you help? And so it still is centering young people, because then you're utilizing your collaborative relationships and network to help young people get their needs met and to get barriers removed and for them to access the things that they need. And it's not just system professionals, it is collaborating with attorneys and public defenders and with homeless shelters or DHS or Medicaid or with employers or with rec centers. It's collaborating with everyone to really work with and help our young people get everything they need. Really, so much of a day in the life too, to bring it even back to that initial question, is collaborating with professionals, calling pretrial or calling parole officer, or getting a call from the school, or talking to mom, or then making emails and sending texts of, I got a kid, he needs a job, who's hiring. So there's so many different things. The last thing I would say too is, I think the thing, I don't have the lived experience that my young people do. I didn't have those same experiences. And I think what I've seen is really powerful is those with lived experience. Back to the how do you advocate? I've seen it done incredibly well where and I've actually seen you do this in different ways, of saying, out of my lived experience, this is what I needed. This is what I see in this young person. And they don't have to use the same professional language. It is saying, out of my own lived experience and what I'm hearing from this young person, I think they need this. And that's really powerful to professionals who don't have that same lived experience, who are projecting from their cognitive, clinical knowledge and understanding, their education of what they think the young person needs. But for somebody with lived experience to come in and say, hey, I know what I needed, and I'm hearing some similar things. I think we need to look at this. That's really, really powerful advocacy.
I agree. And again, the irony of you saying that, when you said that, I was thinking, as you were talking in the conversation we're having, I was thinking about some of my experiences with the professionals who were assigned to Jonathan McMillan's caseload before he ended up going deeper into the system and being imprisoned. Man, I had some shitty professionals in my life, right? I had some real shitty professionals in my life who they saw their job as getting me to fail, right? It wasn't just allowing me to fail, but they actively facilitated getting me into prison.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah. You know me well enough to know, I'll say it this way. I don't regret hardly any experience I've ever had, because I would not be here had it not happened to me. And I think I'm in a pretty dope place in
Yeah,
life
you are.
and doing some dope
Yeah, you
shit because I went through those experiences. It also shows that the system, man, and if you don't know how to advocate for yourself and you don't have the right people in your life, I was extremely lucky in that situation.
I think it just goes back to, I think it goes to the importance of the work of, hey, how do you, I don't like Personally, there's no judgment. I just think we need to move away from using the phrase of voice for the voiceless, because everyone has a voice. It's just their voices need to be helped to be empowered and elevated, educated, all of those things, right? And so part of the work is, how do we, until our young people feel safe enough and they get the space and they know how to advocate for themselves, how do they have the people alongside to advocate? Because the system truly will chew you up and spit you out. And if you don't have those folks in your life, and or you do not know how to advocate for yourself, the system was built for a reason, the way it is for a reason, and that's why we see it. And I was going to say one more last thing. Even when you were saying asking professionals about the acronyms, what I like to do is empower young people to teach me. They were saying SIP. What does SIP mean? Or what is MDT, right? Or what is whatever it is, right? What's a 504 plan? And even with gang stuff, like everything I've learned about gang stuff throughout the city of Denver, it's all been through young people.
Oh yeah.
Everything.
Oh yeah.
Everything. Right? And
that's the easy one.
Yeah.
Because they love talking about, they love to bring you into their world, and that's an easy one. I love that.
And it allows them to be the expert when the whole rest of their lives they've been told, hey, yo, you're dumb, you're not going to amount to nothing, whatever. And it's just continuing to train them that, like, you are an expert, but you're also, like, you're deeply valuable and smart and incredible and all those things. And I guess the last thing too is, and then they become such good experts when it comes to the law and stuff, and they learn how to advocate.
Yes.
And then they know when their public defender is not doing their job, and they know, man, I really shouldn't take this deal. They're bluffing, like, they know. And so they start to really spit game on you because they've been around it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love where this conversation has gone. I want to circle back to the business side, right? The business of having the capacity to do the day-to-day, right? You started off with something that I know is one of the biggest challenges is like a lot of driving. I'm having a flashback right now about all the driving. My poor little Hyundai got so beat up out there in the lanes. I call it my white office on wheels.
Bro, everything is in your car. You eat in your car. You do things you shouldn't do, like texting and email. It is an office on wheels. You got extra clothes in there. I got basketballs and footballs and
stuff from community events,
food,
right? Just
chip.
Yeah. But it's okay. So where I was going with that is, and let's not even forget. I have to acknowledge, I got hit so many times in that car. Just, I was in a constant state of road rage because people just would not see my car. They would run into the side of me.
Real quick, that one time I pull up after there's a drive-by, I came in my wife's car. And my young person didn't know it, and it was super tinted. And the whole hood is out on the front porch. And they're like, what? And I'm rolling up also on the tinted windows. And I roll down the window. He's like, bro, you cannot do that. Because then they start to know your car around the hood. And
yeah, man. I pulled up on a client's house one day, man, and got there a little early. So I'm sitting out front of his house, and I'm texting his mom to let her know that I'm pulling up, right? And she's, I'm not home. Okay, that's part of it, right? So a few minutes, I'm waiting a few minutes. I look up and I see a guy close to my age on the porch, right? And then 6 or 7 other of his homeboys come out. So we're talking about like late 30s to early 40-year-old gang members are just like congregating on this porch looking at me like,
what's up?
So I hop out the car, right? And I'm starting to walk up, and the first one comes up to me, hey, homie, who's you? Right? I'm like, hey, I'm Jonathan. I'm so and so's outreach worker. Hey, little homie, come here. Come talk to this man. But it's just the situations that you find yourself in, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to my question. And again, it's about how do you pay for the gas and the wear and tear on your car and the taking them to get something to eat and buying Nuggets tickets or Rockies tickets or all of those things. Let's talk about the business of generating. It's not even just about fundraising or raising funds, but it's the operations from the day to day. So, as a founder, I would love to hear what was the process to take it from this incredible idea of two people who have been doing direct services in detention facilities to actually operating a CBO, community-based organization. Let's talk about that.
We did the, what's the word last time? And you asked favorite book, and I should have said Tattoos on the Heart by Father Gregory Boyle. And Father Greg runs the most successful gang intervention program in Los Angeles, and he's been a mentor. And since I read that book, he has a conference every year. For about 5 years, I had marinated on, man, I really think I want to do my own thing in this work. It took 5 or 6 years to actually put pen to paper. And so it's been a long journey. And I think folks look at Fly like you guys popped out of nowhere and not understanding all, like you said, all the direct service and stuff that took to get there. But to put it really logistically, like there is a lot to it. Like you said, running a nonprofit, you're running a business. Like that's become more apparent to me than ever before. Like to do the work, we have to run a successful business. It takes getting a board together. That's really simple. Like we had to get a board together. Luckily, I have a lot of incredible folks in my life who have signed up and been a part of the journey from jump. I have a good friend in Houston that started an organization years and years ago, and he helped us walk through this process. And he called it a snowball of you start here and then you get momentum and you start and you keep going and it snowballs onto each other. And so really it was, we got to get a board because we got to get bylaws because we can't get our C3 without this structure. So it was, okay, who can we get on our board? You need at least 3 members. So it's who can join us on the board. And bylaws, I don't know nothing about bylaws. What? You know what I'm saying? So then it's like, I had an attorney friend that I taught with, and he's, hey, use these bylaws. And so then you're networking with your folks. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. And then it's honestly, you go to, like you just said earlier, like, how are you going to pay for this? Because this, I believe, is like my life's work, my life's call. And I got a family and I don't want to perpetuate poverty in my own house, right? So like, how are we going to pay for it? And so you start to think about revenue streams. The organization we came from was almost all donor centric, meaning they almost like, gosh, I want to say, I would guess 80 to 90% of their funding was from individual donors.
Right.
That was a model I felt like we needed to move away from for various reasons. But then where's the money? And a lot of grants, they want to see you have time under your belt before they're going to fund you. So a lot of grants don't want to give seed funding. So then I don't have the luxury of not getting a salary for a year and a half. I grinded it with my last organization. And so it's like, we've got to find a way to make money. And so a lot of it is we knew that who we wanted to work with, and that there are contracts, fee for service contracts that we could engage in because we had done it with our last organization. And so it was like we had to pitch ourselves just like any other business does to become a vendor. We had to pitch why you should contract with us as an organization to provide services for your young people. So we pitched to every major county in the Denver metro to work with kids that are part of the juvenile justice system in the metro area. so that at least we could get some revenue building. We applied for our 501c3. We started 2021, and because of COVID, we wrote a letter to expedite our C3 status, because what we were seeing was young people COVID had deeply impacted incarceration and community-based services for our young people. And so we wrote a letter of how our services were, and they really were like desperately needed for the work. And that actually expedited our C3 status. And the reason why that's so important is because you can't get grants, some grants, not all. You can't get some grants. Donors typically don't want to donate if you don't have your C3. So it's like a big deal to get your 501c3. You need it for fundraising and all of that. Getting our C3, we got it in like spring of 2021. We pitched, we got contracts. But then to be honest with you, it was a grind. It was a grind I feel like just now, we're 2.5 years in. We're in the middle of our third fiscal year. I feel like just now we're starting to get to a really solid financial foundation for the organization. And that's because now we're starting to get more grants, more donors, and not just having to rely on fee for service contracts. They're great, but they don't cover it all. And yeah, I mean, there's so much to the business aspect. We can take this a lot of different ways. So I'll just pause. I don't know if you have any thoughts, but we can take it different ways.
I love where we're going with this. And you have said something that I'm working on being famous for saying, that a 501c3 is a business. It's a business just like any other, as far as you are providing a service in exchange for funds. And it's the main thing that separates it from an LLC or an S Corp or anything else is just that. It's its legal designation. Part of being successful in business is understanding who your intended market is and who your customer is. And that's not necessarily the same thing. Most oftentimes it is, but it's not necessarily the same thing, especially if you're working in 501c3 or social enterprise. And this is me talking directly to the audience right now. Anyone who is thinking about starting a 501c3 because they want to get involved in this work and they see that as the avenue, the vehicle to get there, understand that just because you start a 501c3, the heavens do not open up and money just pours into your bank account because you're doing good work. That's not how it works. Your target audience or target customer most likely are young people or people who are reentry or their families or a community, all of those demographics, those populations. They don't have money to pay you for your services. They don't. So let's stop there.
Nor should
And charity will only get you so far. There's only so many people who are going to give to your cause just out of the kindness of their hearts. So that's the next thing. But your customer is what I would call institutions, government agencies, foundations, health institutes, schools. And what you have to do is be able to market your services to your customer, the people who are going to pay you for providing those services. So I want you to hear what Preston said loud and clear. There was a whole process of understanding the different revenue streams that help organizations, community-based organizations, community violence intervention agencies, organizations be successful. You have to identify what your revenue streams are. So, Preston, thank you for that. I don't want to stop there. My next question is, what is it like managing a business? Because oftentimes people may be really good. Again, I'm going to use the analogy. It's not even an analogy, just the comparison to another business, just like not a nonprofit, a for-profit business. There are people who are entrepreneurs and have developed the skill set of successfully building and maintaining and managing a small business. Oftentimes they understand that just because they're great at frying chicken or cutting hair or whatever it is, artwork, that working on your in your business, frying the chicken, cutting the hair, doing art is different than working on your business, which means the marketing, the management, the operations, all of those things. Tell me what it's like managing operations of Fly.
Another great question. Once again, it's a lot, and I think you are spot on because there are incredible folks that do good, provide really great business services. In our work, it is work with young folks. And we have a lot of even staff members that are incredible with young folks. And for various reasons, they might not be as good administratively. And that's okay because that's where we try to meet them where they're at of, hey, we'll help with the administrative portion. But I think what folks really fail to understand is we come into this because of compassion and empathy and understanding and our yearning to see equity and inclusivity and justice and all the buzzy things. And yet, once again, you're running a business. And those are really different things. Like to merge the two is really hard. And so what does it look like? The things that like doing your 990, doing your taxes. Like that's stuff that I don't want to do, but I have to in order to have this business and the work that we do continue. It's doing bookkeeping. I didn't go to school for bookkeeping. And then learning QuickBooks and not only learning QuickBooks, but ensuring you're doing this the right way because now we've grown so quickly. What a privilege. But we've grown so quickly that now we need audits and financial reviews. And if you don't have things in order, then that audit goes out to the world. And so it's the bookkeeping, it's the website building, it's the invoicing. So when you said like the folks that you're marketing to, those are institutions with a fee for service. We have to do case notes in our work with clients, and then we have to spit out monthly invoices. And there's deadlines to this, and there's ways to do it. Right? We also do work in schools. We have to invoice our schools. We have deadlines when it comes to grants and reporting when it comes to grants. Some of them are actually monthly reports, monthly invoicing, quarterly reports, quarterly. And then there's grant writing. There's a whole world when it comes to grant writing. And I am trial by fire learning. Jumped on a call yesterday about, hey, what could we have done better because we didn't receive a grant? And just learning. There's board development and board management. We do a couple events every year. Just doing events is a whole thing in and of itself. Social media. I haven't even gotten to staff yet, right? Like now
Right.
we're coming up on 12 full-time staff with another close to 15 independent contractors. And where my mind really is right now is how do I be the healthiest and best leader I can be? So much of if you're just, and here's the other thing, the reality is like there are providers that do incredible work and they are just, maybe they have an LLC or they're just a sole provider and they just do it for themselves. They work with 15, 20 clients. They do all their stuff themselves. They do incredible work. I always saw through the lens of Preston can only work with a certain amount of young people. I have a certain capacity. But if I can empower and elevate and train and embolden to other folks, like-minded folks to do the work, now it's not Preston working with 15, 20 young people. It's now we've got 25 folks working with 15 young people and it exponentially grows. And so it's how do you operationalize everything? How do you get more funding to do more work, to have more people along for the ride to do the work? And then when you talk about bringing on staff, you also are bringing on their families, their network, their struggles, their successes, their dreams, their goals, their personality, their background, their lived experience, and then everybody meshing together. And the business side is so multi-layered. And I think even back to a statement I made earlier around young people, I know my limitations and Preston can't do everything. Everybody, like, folks will ask, what are you most grateful for? And I always say relationships. The relationships I have in my life are the greatest blessing and gift I will ever receive. And it's leaning on those relationships to share the burden of the organization, right? Because initially, Natalie and I, we had to do everything. We were our marketing director, we were our communications director, we were our accountant, we were our financial directors, we were the supervisors, we were actually doing direct service too. Like, we were everything. And it gets to a point where that's not sustainable. And as you grow, it's how are you empowering folks to live into their giftedness and their passion to help see. We don't see Fly as an organization, we see it as a movement. So to see Fly as a movement, I had to learn, like, what are the pieces around us we need as a business and operations to help sustain, grow, and create this really solid foundation and culture. And that meant bringing different pieces, right? Hiring directors to oversee our school-based programming, hiring an accountant, hiring someone to do creative design, Natalie and I differentiating roles, hiring direct service staff, hiring somebody to oversee our community-based programming. Now our newest hire will be overseeing our DYS programming, because we can't do it all. And just like any business, we are learning as we go. And I think, once again, that's just the biggest thing I've learned is, like, how do we bring more folks into the fold to move this thing along in a really healthy way?
That's a great answer. I honestly don't even have a follow-up question to that because you just laid it out so eloquently and so clearly. I hope that anyone listening to this hears that there are multiple ways to go about getting the work done, and that you don't have to start your own organization in order to be effective. Although there's a possibility there, like you could do that. For many years, people would look at me and the work that I was doing and be like, "I want to start my own nonprofit." And what do you think I should do? And I tell them, "Don't."
Yeah, you said that to me. Yeah, don't.
Yeah. And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Because running a nonprofit is much different than doing what you're really good at.
100%.
You're really good at organizing events and getting kids there and making sure the kids are engaged and that you bring people around who pour into the kids in a positive way. And you're really good at that. But I also know that you're not really good at doing the paperwork, right? That's not your strong suit. So my advice would be find an existing organization that could use what you do, and you all help each other to serve more young people
Yep.
together. And then once you learn more about the business side of running a nonprofit, then revisit it and see if that's what you want to do. Because unfortunately, I've also seen the other side of things is when people start a nonprofit and they're in over their heads in the operations piece of it, and they may be doing really good work, but then it's not sustained because funding didn't come through, or funding did come through and it was misappropriated. Not in a malicious way, but rent needed to be paid. And so they were pulling funds that were supposed to go towards programming towards personal use. And more money, more problems, in the words of the late, great Christopher Wallace.
You said that yesterday.
People get a little bit of success and then, or get a little bit of money. I won't even say success, get a little bit of money, and it's the worst thing that could happen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think, even back to what you said earlier, the heavens will open. And let's say the heavens do open, which for us, it took a while, but the heavens did open. And if you aren't ready for that, man, like, that could be one of the worst things for you, is that if somebody dropped $1 million in your lap and you're not ready for it. And so I fully agree with you. And I think what I love to see, and I would even add a layer to it, of, I think there are some people too who just want so badly to dive into the work, right? The whatever the work is, like social justice work or youth work or whatever. And I think it's like even finding your lane. There are so many lanes in the work. One is what area do you want to focus on? Is it unhoused? Is it youth violence? Is it gang intervention? Is it substance misuse? Is it immigration? What is it? Is it LGBTQIA plus communities? Like, what is the area of focus? Then, where are you gifted and passionate? Like you were talking about organizing. Okay, great. You could organize for all these different organizations, but if you're not passionate, so what's first the area? Then I love to organize. Dope. Let's do that. And then, like you said, I was in leadership roles at my last organization, and I still didn't have an understanding of what does it take to run the business. I was supervising and managing program. That is so different than business. So getting in, and also, so I think like for me, it's also, I think some of the wisdom and advice is like for folks in school or maybe with lived experience is like dabble around. Like I jumped around to find out where am I feeling really passionate and called to. I was an educator. I was a coach. I coached basketball and baseball. I was a mentor for multiple organizations, right? I was a chaplain. I was a transition worker. Like I did so many different things to find like where's really my niche. And I think we've seen some of our former contracted staff specifically where they think that this is the work. They get in and they realize really quickly, same for me. And so it's, I would also say, just try out different organizations too. If you're thinking about the broad scope of quote unquote the work, and then to run a business, though, I don't want to discourage anyone. I think you just don't want to be naive. And here was some of the greatest wisdom I got. One of my mentors started an organization in Tacoma, Washington. And he's in his 60s and he's just so wise. And I kept saying to him for years, I think I need to start my own organization. And he would say to me, Preston, you're effing crazy. And he said, but if you feel like there's no other way, then you need to do it. So I understand those folks who say, Jonathan, I've tried to come alongside. I've been inside organizations. I feel like I really need to do this. Great. I think my wisdom would be don't go at it alone. And who's in your network that can really walk alongside you for a long haul to help bring this dream into reality? Because if you go solo and with the wrong folks around you, I don't care how good your intentions are or how good of a practitioner you are or how great your passion is, it can crumble pretty quick. Yeah.
Preston, this conversation has been fantastic. I genuinely love talking with you, and
Same. It's mutual.
It just feels so much a conversation amongst friends, between friends, that I believe brings value to everyone else. Even as you were just talking a little bit about the growth of Fly and your motivations of, it was you and Natalie, and you only had so much capacity,
Yep.
right? And so you grow and you bring on other people who then they multiply your capacity by bringing people on exponentially. Yep. That's what I feel this podcast. That's my vision for this podcast.
I love that.
I can only have so many one-on-one conversations with people. And I can only tell so many people about a conversation that I had with Preston or I had with Troy or I had with whoever it is. I'm hoping that exponentially I am legitimizing, professionalizing, elevating, amplifying our work, our profession, our voices, our impact through this podcast. So thank you.
That.
Thank you.
Yeah. And once again, I'm just grateful to be a part of that process. Yep.
I always want to give my guests the opportunity to share a message with the audience as closing thoughts. The podcast is called The Credible Messenger. I think that I have demonstrated why I view Preston as a credible messenger. He's been on the show twice. He has shared with us just an expansive perspective of what the work looks like for him. And I think that demonstrates exactly why I consider him to be a credible messenger. So with that said, Preston, I would love for you to share a message with the audience as we close out.
Yeah, I think maybe last time was easier. I want to maybe talk more on the business side. I think the message I want to share is let's, as folks in the work, as leaders, business owners, humans, partners, parents, everyone, how do we move from checking boxes to embodying values? And I think really centering on, specifically for us, Hassan Latif. I want to shout out my man Hassan, who's the founder, executive director of Second Chance Center. He said to me, like, Preston, never lose sight of those that you're serving. Like, always center them. And I think when we center those folks that we are being asked to come alongside and serve, and then we live into specific values and we truly try and center those values, that's the work. And so our values that fly, humility, sacredness, graciousness, and liberation, we're constantly trying to embody that. And we don't want to just talk about things like equity and social justice, and we want to embody it. So that means like it's a rethinking of how you do everything. So even in business, we can't talk about equity for young people if we aren't living that as a business. So I just think my biggest thing for anyone is how do you live into and embody values? And that's what we're trying to do, and show up authentically. So that's what I got.
Man, that's dope. That's timely. I think I've shared with you in one of our many conversations. I started this year being very intentional of identifying value in my life, meaning both the things that I value and the value that I bring. And once again, shows why we're in alignment and I believe on the same frequency. So I love all of that, man. Thank you. I absolutely am going to have you back on as the show progresses. You are bringing value to our audience. I have a feeling that people are really going to tap into all of the information and knowledge and expertise and just even your perspective. So thank you again. And for my listeners, let me thank you. If you made it this far, that means that I brought you value. And that's always my goal. So I thank you for tuning in and listening to me. I have a couple of favors to ask. One is to download this episode and let other people know about it. Share it through your networks. As we get onto Apple Podcasts and other platforms, I ask that you leave a review. Let people know what you liked about this conversation and this show so that we can expand our reach to other people so that we continue to expand and grow our impact across the nation as we all look for solutions in gun violence and youth violence prevention. That being said, one last favor is take care of yourselves and tune in for the next episode. I'm Jonathan McMillan, and this has been the Credible Messenger Podcast. Peace.